Hey, welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis, and today I want to bring you a top 10 of feel-good albums. These are 10 albums that whenever I put them on, I feel better. So if you're down in the dumps, feeling blue, put on one of these albums. I guarantee you, they all carry Hollis's heart-healthy stamp of approval. Patent pending. Before we get going, I just want to send a big thank you to all my patrons. If you would like to support Pop Culture Graveyard, please consider joining my Patreon at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard. Back to the show. Now on to Hollis's never fail, rainy day, chase the blues away, feel good albums. First up, Ariel Ballet by Nilsson. I am a massive Harry Nilsson fan. You recently heard me talk about the Mo-Fi edition of Nilsson's Schmilsson, his masterpiece. But this is my favorite album by him. It's got my favorite batch of Nilsson songs. The early editions lead off with the track Daddy's Song, which he later sold to the Monkees, which I believe is why it was pulled from all subsequent pressings. But this album is still action-packed. In addition to perhaps his best vocal performance ever, which is Saying Something, in Everybody's Talkin', the Fred Neil song. This album also features the original version of One, which was later made into a big hit by Three Dog Night. Which, great as that song was, I feel lost the loneliness at the emotional core of the song, which is here in spades. Nilsson said he wrote the song listening to the telephone busy signal, going beep, 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 beep. And so he started writing a song to that pulse, and the effect is stunning. You will be uplifted by this album thanks to the sheer joy in songs like Good Old Desk and Little Cowboy. But there is a vein of sadness running through this entire album. In songs like Don't Leave Me and The Wailing of the Willow, you just want to cry with the song's narrator because it's so fucking sad and beautiful at the same time. There's such an emotional connective tissue between all of the songs on this album that one can imagine the characters from one song inhabiting another song, such as the character in Together who just broke up with his woman. I can picture that character being the same guy in Bath, who wakes up after a night spent in a bordello, takes his bath, and is feeling a lot better about things. My two favorite songs on this album, though, are the Mr. songs. Mr. Richland's favorite song, and Mr. Tinker. Sometimes I can't get through either of those without crying, but in a good way. They're so innately despondent and sad that much the way the best blues songs do, they will put your petty problems in perspective. This is one of my top 50 albums of all time. I love this album. May even be top 20. May even be top 10. That's an argument for a different day. I'm getting way off track. Suffice it to say, no matter what mood I'm in when I put this album on, this album always leaves me in a better mood. Up next, Catano Veloso. This is his 1971 self-titled album, not to be confused with his other self-titled albums. Catano Veloso, for lack of a better description, is sort of like the Brazilian Bob Dylan. I love him. I think I have his first 10 albums. That's my era that I really, really love. But he's still putting out wonderful material, even at this age. This was the album that he made in exile when he was in England. He was sort of forced out of Brazil by the strict military regime that was cracking down on the expression of a lot of the music artists of the time. He decided to sing in English on this album to sort of convey exactly how much of a fish out of water he was at the time, and it was a brilliant choice. All of the songs on this album tell Caetano's story. No matter how bad you're feeling, after you listen to leadoff track A Little More Blue, you're suddenly feeling bad for him. One day I had to leave my country, calm beach and palm trees. That day I couldn't even cry. And he continues to tell all these tales about when he was taken to jail, or when he was a kid and he saw a picture of Carmen Miranda dead in a newspaper. And the song is about how he's feeling a little more blue than he did then. It's so effective. Another song I adore on here is Maria Bethania. Maria Bethania, one of the greatest singers Brazil has produced, she's his sister, and she was still home in Brazil. And the whole thing is about Maria Bethania. Please write me a letter. I want to know things are getting better, 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 Bethania. It breaks your heart. And there's a little wordplay with her name that just kind of stretches out the longing that he must be feeling. Ah, killer, killer album. Perfect for a rainy day, literally or figuratively. Up next, let's tear the roof off the mother sucker, Mothership Connection by Parliament. In general, I don't know how you can be upset when good funk is playing. George Clinton is a god. A rip off your money, get you hooked on coke, steal your songwriting god. But a god nonetheless. Some of my favorite Parliament songs are on here. Mothership Connection is my favorite, also known as Star Child. You could break that song up into multiple parts and have a bunch of great songs. If you hear any noise, it's just me and the boys hitting it. You gotta hit the band. Ain't nothing but a party, y'all. But the song goes into overdrive when it gets to swing down, sweet chariot, stop, and let me ride. Holy hell. So much of modern music would have had nothing to build upon without George Clinton. It's also got Give Up the Funk, Tear the Roof Off the Sucker. We got a real type of thing going down, getting down. There's a whole lot of rhythm going round on that song. The leadoff track, P-Funk Wants to Get Funked Up. Come on. It opens up like a radio station DJ is talking to you. That's W-E-F-U-N-K, better known as We Funk. To this day, I make my funk the P-Funk. I want my funk uncut. There's a very funny song on here called Handcuffs. The lyrics to Handcuffs talk about a guy whose lady is running around on him. And the lyrics, do I have to put my handcuffs on your mama? Do I have to put you under lock and key? How the fuck are you going to be sad when you're hearing that? All the usual suspects are here. Bootsy Collins, Bernie Worrell, Gary Scheider, my beloved Gary Scheider, Fred Wesley, Maceo Parker, Fuzzy Haskins, Glenn Goins. There are stellar musicians on here. And the overall effect is dizzying. And this super groovalistic album always makes me feel better. Up next, B-52's Party Mix. I talked about this album and how it gets short shrift in my B-52s episode, one of my first episodes, which you can reach by clicking above. I could have mentioned any B-52s album here because they all make you feel better. All their albums are upbeat, good-natured, and fun. And I defy you to stay in a bad mood once you put one of them on. But there's something whimsical and lovely about this 6-track extended dance mix album. It features great songs from each of their first 2 LPs. And as I said in my B-52s episode, it's got my favorite version of Party Out of Bounds. The LP version is really the one to get, as all of the songs blend seamlessly into each other. That is not true of the CD. In any case, this is one of those albums that you can just put on and dance your bad times away. Sometimes when you're sad, you like to wallow in your sadness, and that's fine. Sometimes you don't want anything to trigger you. I give you the B-52s, not triggering people for well over 40 years. There's great humor on here in Party Out of Bounds, Private Idaho, and Lava. And if you want to sing along with anguish in your voice, there's Give Me Back My Man. But even that is filled with humor, as the song's narrator tries to trade candy and fish for her man. This is a fun album, this is a sexy album, and one thing this is not is a sad album. This album is a full-on blues breaker. Up next, Dare by the Human League. This 1981 gem of a synth-pop classic is of course the Human League's most popular album. And it's popular for a great reason. It's smoking. Of course it features Don't You Want Me Baby, which is one of the most feel-good, heartbreaking songs ever. It's a really fun song to sing along to. You know what's lost in all of that excitement? We don't ever get an answer from the lady. Don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me? Oh? He's trying to get her to change her mind. And listening to what a hard time this dude is having trying to get this lady back just has to make you feel good. But that is not the only great song on this album. The leadoff track, Things That Dreams Are Made Of, is a fantastic song in its own right. The lyrics of this song has the magic recipe for living life. Everybody needs love and adventure. Everybody needs cash to spend. Everybody needs love and affection. Everybody needs 2 or 3 friends. That's it. Wipe away your tears and live your life. You've got the blueprint now. When you add in songs like Love Action, Open Your Heart, and The Sound of the Crowd, this is a masterpiece. Put it on the turntable and let the good times roll. Up next, staying with the synth pop, Ministry with Sympathy. I unabashedly love this era of Ministry. I know many people say that Ministry didn't really start until after this era, but this to me is the Ministry that interests me. I loved this album when it came out, and I love it still, and it always makes me feel good. It's that meaty part of the curve where synth pop meets goth, which is right on the money for me. Side 1 is a perfect side of music. Effigy, Revenge, I Wanted to Tell Her, and Work for Love. That is an overwhelming side of music. The fact that side 2 also has interesting music on it is all gravy, because you're probably going to play side 1 over and over and over again. I especially recommend this record for anyone getting over a breakup. I wanted to tell her, but I stuck to my lies. I wanted to tell her till I looked in her eyes. So your mileage may vary on this based on how you feel about this era of ministry. But for me, it's got my favorite all-time ministry song on it, Revenge. Ain't got time for what you feel. Ain't got time for what you feel. You did it again. You did it again. You did it again and again and again. And it just sounds better with the faux British accent. This album is a deathly delight. And for me, it's a feel-good album. Next up, General Public, All the Rage. I own about 5 copies of this because this album will run you about $5, and I never want to wear this album out and not have a backup. This album came out the year before I started high school, and I remember it very clearly. I know every single lyric on this album, backwards and frontwards. It's got one of the best feel-good songs ever, Tenderness. Again, a great song whether you're going through a breakup or you're snugly happy in your relationship. Tenderness. I held your hand, rings but not on that finger. We danced and danced, but I was scared to go much further with it. Just half a chance. Make sure that you're here one night, but next night you're not. It always leaves me searching for a little tenderness. I think we all know what he's talking about. Maybe if you tried a little more tenderness, he wouldn't be sad, and none of us would be sad. People like to think of this album as just having that one hit, but this entire album is great. Check out Never You Done That if you think that Tenderness is the only good thing on here. The album kicks off with Hot You're Cool, one of my favorite tracks by them. As a matter of fact, Where's the Line? The track named after them, General Public, is great. Are You Leading Me On is one of my favorites on here. Are you leading me on, or is there something behind it? I don't know, but I need to find out. Are you leading me on? This is one of those albums where you just put it on and you let it play. You shouldn't skip one song on this album. The wealth of emotions that the band run through on this album will ensure that at least one of these tracks will make you feel better. Wildly, wildly underrated. Up next, Lovely by the Primitives. Talk about a beautiful sounding album. This album came out in 1988. I was in high school and I was a massive, massive Smiths fan. Morrissey was touting the Primitives. One word from him at the time, and I would look into that band. So I quickly went out and tracked down the band's album. Crash is the song you know on here, even if you think you don't know any songs on here. Here You Go, Way Too Fast, Don't Slow Down, You're Gonna Crash. The lead vocals by the beautiful Tracy Tracy are absolutely gorgeous and will always make you feel good. Crash was a smash hit around the globe, but every song on here is great. Out of Reach, Through the Flowers, Nothing Left, Stop Killing Me, Carry Me Home. This is a deceptively heavy hitter of an album with lots of great songs. One slam you can make about this album is that a lot of the songs sort of sound the same, but that song that they sound the same as fucking rocks. Run, Don't Walk. Pick up this wonderful, wonderful album and be transported to a beautiful land where you're not sad. Up next, Kim Wilde. This 1981 self-titled debut packs a wallop. Yes, it has Kids in America. Kids in America is beloved by everyone from New York to East California. But that is the tip of the iceberg with this album. I'm going to put links below to some of my favorite tracks off this, such as Water on Glass, which if possible is even more upbeat than Kids in America. 26580, one of my favorites by her, is another wonderful, dancey, upbeat song. There's a slow reggae-tinged track, Everything We Know, that has some wonderful bass playing and a slow, seductive vocal performance from Kim. All of Kim's biggest hits were co-written by her father and brother, and they clearly knew what was right for her voice. It is a fantastic feel-good LP, and one that is wildly affordable. Why don't you get it? And finally, Ramones, their self-titled 1976 debut. When All Else Fails, Break Glass in Case of Emergency. I defy you to be in a bad mood while this album is playing. How great is this album? Blitzkrieg Bop is my least favorite track on this album, and I like that track. The cartoonish characters that populate this album can't help but put a smile on your face. And you may even laugh out loud through a lot of these songs. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, They Took My Baby Away From Me, But She'll Never Get Out of There, She'll Never Get Out of There, I Don't Care. Whoa, whoa. First of all, to pronounce massacre as it's written, massacre, and rhyme it with the word me, is the kind of moronic genius that made the Ramones so exceptional. It's got perhaps my 2 favorite I Don't Wanna songs, I Don't Wanna Walk Around With You, and I Don't Wanna Go Down to the Basement. Even amid all the comical madness, you get I Wanna Be Your Boyfriend, one of the sweetest, most plaintive love songs ever. Thank you, Tommy Ramone. Between Loudmouth, Havana Affair, and Beat on the Brat, I don't know how you can maintain a bad mood while listening to this album, but if you can maintain a bad mood for 4 hours after listening to this album, consult your doctor. That is it for Hollis's Top 10 Feel-Good Albums. I'm going to add a few extra albums, but that's just for my Patreon members. So Patreon members, please look for that. Did you enjoy this episode? Would you like another installment of Feel-Good Albums? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and I will see you next week with a lot more cool stuff.